Thursday morning. Today we're going to have something that might be a little bit disturbing to a lot of you, and that's a good thing, I think. We're going to be talking about the standard agency answers to commoditization, which are hypocritical. At least they are in the mind of Chris Burand of Burand Associates. Now, if you don't know Chris, you haven't been paying attention because he's been around for a long time. He's a major consultant, one of the top ones in the country. Chris and I have worked together for years, and what I always admired about him, he knew, he majored in those days, and maybe still now, Chris, I don't know, in knowing the insurance company and agency contracts and understanding them totally. And it was rare that he could go into an agency or an agency would call on him where he couldn't justify whatever they paid him by saying, hey, this contract with XYZ company could be a lot better because of this, this, and this. You still do that, Chris, some or not?
Oh, yeah, we still do it and do it at a much higher level now. So the ROI on my services is way better than the stock market ROI.
Yeah, the return on investment, folks, if you haven't ever done this and you want to do it, I tell you, I promise you, it pays for itself. So, yeah, and anyway, enough of that. Chris, he wrote an article that was just terrific, and I jumped on it because he had seen an article in the Insurance Journal. Tell us about it, Chris.
Yeah, this Insurance Journal article has to do with the commoditization of insurance. And the article went on to say, agents react to Walmart, overstock in insurance. We aren't dead or dying, we are evolving. The theme, this was that P&C especially, all the P&C that is not personal auto is complex. That was the theme of the article. That was the theme of what the agents interviewed and the associations interviewed were thinking that all insurance other than personal auto is complex when done right. Their thought process was that many direct writers don't explain the complexities of these coverages, these exposures.
That's for sure.
So the implication, what the authors and the people interviewed were implying was that customers buying from these entities are not getting the coverages and or the amount of coverage that they truly need. And,
I understand.
You know,
I could argue with that so far.
Yeah, and the fact is, that's a really hypocritical opinion because I've been working with independent agencies now for 25 plus years. I do E&O audits all over the United States and Canada. And based on my interviews, based on meeting with literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of individual agency employees and producers and owners over the course of every year, they can offer crucial, important information to consumers. They can offer the right coverages. They can offer the right level of coverages, but they don't. And that's just a fact. This isn't a Chris Burand opinion. That is just simply a fact. They far too often choose not to offer any education, any coverage reviews, not even review the insurance true coverage needs. That's a fact.
I agree with you. No question about it.
And when I do the audits, and based on my conversations with other consultants, 90% of agencies, independent agencies, don't use any kind of coverage checklist on a consistent basis.
That blows my mind. That's so much higher than I thought. I thought at least half of them would do it.
No, not at all. And the resistance to doing it is intense in some agencies. Some producers will threaten to quit. Some will quit if forced to use a coverage checklist. I'll tell you a very interesting story that just occurred 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay.
I was meeting a consumer, an insurance buyer. They buy insurance. This person's in charge of buying insurance for their company. Their company's a very complex company. They have huge insurance needs. particularly in the commercial liability areas. And he told me, he said, here I am, I'm buying insurance from two of the largest brokers in North America. And we're a growing company. Our company is growing very quickly, 20+% revenue growth annual.
Oh, God.
So our needs, our exposures, the property we own, the number of employees we have, everything's changing rapidly. They come in, the brokers came in for the renewal, and I'm asking them how our growth affects our coverage. And even though I'm not an insurance agent, he said, I've read the policy. I actually sat down and read the policy, and I realized that some of the coverages do not match our current needs.
Oh, brother.
And I asked him, point blank, he said, I asked them to go through a coverage checklist with me so we could upgrade the coverages we needed, and they would not do it.
They didn't want the account very badly, did they?
Right, and they said, the bottom line was, they said, do you understand that if we do that, your costs will increase?
I don't understand that. Well, maybe so. Yeah, otherwise, your costs are going to increase because we're going to be providing you more things that you really need.
Right, exactly. And he said, I cannot understand why any insurance agent or any producer or any broker would not be sitting down with their clients. I walked away from that meeting. I've got to have new brokers that actually care about the coverages I need, rather than, and will take the time to learn the coverages, rather than telling me we shouldn't do it because it's going to cost more.
Oh, God. Wonders never cease.
Right, and that, I wish that was isolated, but it's absolutely not an isolated example, George. Not at all.
I'll be darned. All right.
So my experience, and since I wrote this article, I've had all kinds of emails come in supporting that this is indeed, unfortunately, what does happen to the chagrin of the writers of the emails, agency owners, producers, CSRs. All they're doing is renewing as is, year after year after year. How can someone understand, figure out, identify what coverages someone needs or what level of coverage they need if all they do is renew as is? And I am not exaggerating. I've been in many agencies where we're going through their files, we're going through their customer list, and some of their clients, if the clients have not called the agency hasn't called the client to discuss changes in coverages in 10 to 20 years.
That's craziness. I never heard that. I understand, though, because I'm not hearing from my guy right now, but that's another story. I like your last line that a computer can do both those functions. This morning, Dan Bruce sent out one of his newsletters, he's a great speaker, on Watson, the IBM Watson. And everybody, and he says, you know, it's so smart, it does everything, and they just opened a $1 billion setup for Watson, IBM did. My point is, or his point was, but how long is it going to be before the Watsons of the world will make the decisions for the agents automatically anyway? And well, it really is a challenge when you think about it.
Yeah, the technology actually already exists and has existed for some time. It just hasn't been completely employed, although there is some employment of the technology occurring in certain segments already. And that's simply that one can take OCR, optical character recognition software, scan the existing coverages off a deck page, and create a quote for 20 other companies. That technology has existed for some time. It just has, for whatever reasons, it hasn't been used. It's coming. The cost of the technology development is too low. The cost of memory is almost lower than the cost of oil. It's just unreal where this whole world is going. And now, on Friday, I think it was, we had news that Google's bought an insurance license, and they've got a lineup of, I can't remember the exact count, but 15 major carriers to start doing personal lines. Man, quoting existing coverages is the epitome of commoditization, but Google's the epitome of making everything automated. If they can make an automated car, they can make automated quotes of existing coverages. That's a whole lot simpler to do. So what's an agency going to do? I mean, unpleasant as they are, deny it at your own risk, because these are facts. These are not Chris Burand opinions, George Nordhaus opinion. These are just facts. And by talking about how agents can offer such valuable services, and there's no bigger proponent in the world than me at actually offering these valuable services, but then not actually offering them, it's hypocritical. And not only is it hypocritical, it's damaging. It's damaging to the brand. It's damaging to the entire industry. And yet we have associations and agents trying to have it both ways. That's obviously part of the definition of hypocritical, is trying to have it both ways. Everyone wants the spread of commoditization to stop. But in the same magazine, the same venue, they'll have E&O attorneys advising agencies rely on duty to read case law. Don't advertise that the agency's an expert. Don't spend the time advising, don't spend the time talking to your small accounts. Well, if you're not going to spend time talking to your small accounts, you're not offering the valuable services they're paying you for.
I like that. Somebody should have said this a long, long time ago, and I'm glad you're saying it.
Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's one or the other.
Okay.
Which is it going to be? You know, which is it going to be? So 5 facts of agency reality. Complexity. I love the slides here. The complexity cannot be explained. Now, consumers are inadequately educated about insurance proper coverages. I had a conversation this morning where the example was a $1 million home insured completely incorrectly, simply because the doctor, it was a doctor that owned the home, thought he knew everything he needed to know about homeowners insurance. Absolutely doesn't. So that's the truth. No question about it. So, but the fact is that if we go out and start talking about, hey, you've got to be more educated, but then we're telling insurance, hey, you got to read your policy. You know, everybody in the world has something better to do than sit and read their policy.
I've never read one. Have you? Well, you probably have.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's my business, so yes, I have. But the fact is that no one else does. No one else wants to. Reading insurance policies has got to be one of the most god-awful, boring things to do unless you're an insurance nerd. So this is an incredibly hypocritical position to take. Complete. So if agents don't think that insurance is a commodity, and they don't want the public to think of insurance as a commodity, then put your money where your mouth is. Quit treating it as a commodity. Rather than quoting existing coverages, explore what the insurance needs are. Give them a quote for the coverages most applicable rather than requested coverages. If we agree that insureds are not insurance experts that know what it is that they need, then why would we agree to quote the coverages that they've requested? But by default, we're quoting inadequate coverages then. Let's explore what it is that they actually need. Just take homeowners as a simple example. I've sat with thousands of CSRs. And the fact is this, most do not offer higher limits. At best, they will offer $300,000 or $500,000 liability limits, but they won't offer higher limits. And higher is defined as higher limits than the insured has requested, period. It doesn't matter if they requested 300 or 500 or $1 million or $5 million. Offer higher limits. One is it gets the insured to think about how much coverage they truly need, because most truly do need more than 300,000, in my personal opinion. I'm not licensed. I'm not giving that kind of advice, but I'm just saying that logically it seems that most middle-class homeowners probably need more than 300,000. let's offer them more coverage. Let them know more is available. Personal lines and small commercial lines, the producers are often worse than the CSRs. They look at it and they say, man, I'm not going to spend the time on that because it doesn't pay me enough commission. Frankly, from my perspective, why should it pay you any commission? Because you're not doing a job. The producer wants to be seen as the insurance professional, but they're not taking the professional steps to do the job right. The only way to do it right is with a coverage checklist to determine the insurer's real needs. A couple of things is that when it's used right, you're going to identify a huge proportion of the insured's exposures. The policy, in a way, we're going back 30, 40 years when you had to build, use homeowners as an example, you had to build the policy from scratch. It wasn't all the coverages weren't all put together at once. But if you look at a homeowner's policy, there's, I believe, on the standard set of forms, there's approximately 25 different endorsements. When I go and visit agencies, 90+% of all insurers only have the same 2 endorsements. The other 23 have rarely ever been discussed with anybody, any of the consumers, much less identified who sold those coverages. And consumers do need, a material portion of consumers truly do need some of those other forms. Coverage checklist is a proven way to reduce E&O exposures. And all of my clients that use, my best clients that use a coverage checklist religiously, use it correctly, their sales increase. So it's a real win-win situation.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't realize that. That's great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and their sales can increase a lot in some cases. So the idea, I had this conversation this morning before we were doing this webinar, George. Someone said to me, this attorney was saying that, hey, you shouldn't use a checklist because if you miss one item, you're screwed. Yeah. Pardon the terminology, but you're screwed in an E&O suit. That's an excuse. And, you know, coming from another perspective is that when you do this, that's just an excuse to avoid responsibility. It really is nothing more than an excuse to avoid responsibility for identifying an insured's needs. Furthermore, with a checklist, even if you do miss 1 out of 10, which is, it's going to, if you miss something and you use it right, it's going to be closer to missing 1 out of 100. If you miss 1 out of 10, that's a whole lot better than missing 5 out of 10 by not using a coverage checklist. I mean, the math on this just doesn't work from where this conversation I had this morning. I mean, any attorney that says, yes, but if you miss the 10, I show you're a peddler because you miss so much. They're missing the bigger picture. Because that defense always reminds me of that great scene out of Animal House where the dean tells the one kid that being, I'm paraphrasing, being fat, dumb, and lazy is no way to go through life, son. Well, that's kind of what the attorney's defense is. If I can show that you miss lots of coverages, I can help you win the case. Well, how great is that for building a brand? I'm a professional agent. I'm going to miss bunches of coverages so that you can't hold me liable when you don't have the coverage you need. I don't see the future there. I see no future whatsoever in that business model. I cannot imagine, from Hurricane Katrina, you know, Utica Mutual did a study afterwards, and they found that approximately 50% of all E&O claims would have been avoided.
Wow.
Had agents use coverage checklists.
Wow. Every agent in the country ought to see that.
Everybody.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
And if you look at that, you know, I did a lot of E&O work in the New Orleans area following Katrina. And you're talking about literally hundreds of E&O claims occurring following that catastrophe. So you think about cutting the number of claims from hundreds by half with one tool, and yet we have experts and attorneys out there saying, don't use this tool. It makes no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense from an E&O perspective. It makes no sense from building a correct brand. It makes no sense building a defense for the commoditization of insurance that we would avoid the use of coverage checklist. So it's great to talk about all these advantages, but unless you're going to actually walk the walk, what good does it do? It actually makes the situation far worse, way far worse. Fact is this: consumers need an agent's professional advice. They do, because the consumer out there is not a professional. I think some of the commercials that I see from, I'll name names, Allstate Farmers right now are phenomenal, because they're doing a great job of educating the consumer about what coverages they may need that they didn't know they needed. So going forward, this is where the opportunity, because if the agent listening to this really believes their customers need professional advice, then quit hiding behind the E&O defenses of duty to read your policies. Consumers don't need you if that's what you're going to hide behind. They don't need an agent that says, you read the policy and figure out whether it's adequate for your needs. They don't need to pay an agent 10%, 11%, 12%, 15% if they've got to do the work of reading the policy. Scary fact here, George, is that a scary fact associated with this. You know, one of the reasons why. This is a fact. This is a Chris Burand opinion. And I'm not saying it occurs everywhere. The fact is that one of the reasons agents like the duty to read your policy disclaimer is because the producers aren't taking the time to read the policies themselves.
I'm sure that's true.
It is absolutely 100% true. A very common occurrence happens in a lot of educational classes that I hear from some of the best instructors in the country on coverages. And what happens in the seminars is that producers in particular come up to them and say, just tell me how this policy reads. And the instructor will say, well, you've been in business for 10 years. What do you think it says? And this is absolutely the truth. The producer will say, I don't know. I've never taken the time to read the policy.
We're back to that point again.
Yeah. So the article cited experts saying an online presence was the key. Well, how discreet? Obviously, you have to have online presence. But what are you going to advertise if you're not an expert? What's your advantage? Why should people buy from you if you're not a professional, if you're not in advertising? I mean, is your tagline going to be best price for a commodity? That's oxymoronic, because commodities, by definition, are priced the same. And no agent out there is ever going to possess a search engine the way Google has a search engine. And if Google's in the business, that's a losing proposition right away. So quit being lazy. Number 4, quit being lazy. I can't not tell you how many times I've heard producers say they don't know whether a client has certain coverages because they never verify the coverages when the policy arrives. That's really, really important, especially you take a surplus lines policy where they can change coverages at renewal without telling you, and the producer is not reading the renewal to verify the coverages haven't changed without notification. That's crazy. That's just pure, absolute laziness. Insurers don't need that. I recently witnessed several situations where the producers were too lazy. Lazy. Not because they thought it was a great sales tactic or anything, just flat out lazy to even get signatures on the applications. not only do consumers not need lazy agents, but the fact that they don't get signatures on the applications increases the agency's E&O risk. And it increases the E&O risk because an application is a testament, for lack of a better word. I don't know the correct legal terminology, but it's basically a testament between the insured and the insurance carrier. When the application is not signed, it becomes a testament between the agent and the carrier. So that if there's an error on the application and it's unsigned, it becomes the agent's problem, likely, rather than the insured's problem. That's a significant E&O risk. The study cited a PIA study showing that 67% of consumers want their agent to contact them at least once every 6 months. But that doesn't happen. Going back years, I've seen this kind of a study repeated over and over and over. Consumers truly do want more contact from their agents. But I see situations where we're renewing as is for 10 years. We're not providing the level of service the clients are telling us. And yet we think that for some reason or another, that just because we can offer the services but don't offer the services, insureds should recognize us and stop thinking of insurance as a commodity. That's kind of crazy in my world.
Mine too.
Give them what they want. Communication, education. So,
you know, let me just make a point right there. That's what I'm working on. I've been working on for the last 2.5 years, is a whole system of formalizing that so that the agents do. They know how often people want to be contacted. They continue to contact them. A lot of it's on autopilot, and it should be. You're going to hear a lot about Chris, in the months ahead. It's called insurance needs analysis, and it's amazing because it goes right to that point. You've got to do it. I started to tell you, I am insured by one of the top 5 brokers in the country here, just personally, but in Santa Fe and my home and all those like that. And I cannot. It was a local guy, and I knew him for many years, and he insured. But then he sold to this big company. I have not heard from him one single time since this is 2 years ago. And I'd leave, but as a friend, I don't know. But you got the point. I want to be talked to. I want to have an annual review. I want to have something to know that we're still here. I can't believe it. That's another story. That's the kind of stuff, Chris, that got me started on the insurance needs analysis kind of thing, and developing it. And it was happening to me personally. And if it's going to happen to me personally, you can see what's going to happen. Okay, enough said. Sorry, just want to make my speech there for a minute.
No, it's absolutely accurate, and it's a need. It's a tool that provides the answer to the needs that agents have if they'll recognize it and purchase it. And they need, one way or another, they need to do this if there's going to be a future there. So I know this article when I wrote it. I know this article, this presentation now is going to upset people. But there's nothing that I have said that isn't a fact or isn't just pointing out the lack of logic. In fact, the convoluted logic, contradictory logic being applied. And so it's not really, I'm not pointing out anything, it's not an opinion or what have you. These are just facts where things are upside down. One of the funniest things that happens when I write articles like this, and I've been doing this for a long time now, is that sooner or later someone reads the article and they send me a note saying, how dare you tell the world that I'm doing my job wrong? And I don't even know the person from Adam. But that goes to show the sensitivity of people out there, of some agents, some insurance companies for that matter. They know they're not doing the job right, and now they're scared that someone's pointed it out to their clients, their prospects. Man, it's simple enough to do your job right. Quit trying to hide. There's no future in that. And I'm not saying this applies to everybody because, very frankly, I've got some amazing clients that do use coverage checklists. They have a very thorough review process. They have wonderful technical skills. They're also having far more success than the standard average agency. It's amazing. So, nowhere in here do I write that 100% of agents do this or do that. keep that in mind. Every time I write or present about stepping up, being a true professional, I also receive disparaging comments from these insecure people, especially some of the company people, which always surprises me that a company person would be so upset about this. But the neat thing is, and I did this about a year ago, I wrote an article, not quite this pointed, and I received this wonderful note from this lady out in California who said, "You have no idea how wonderful it is to see you write this and to know that there's a lot of agents getting upset. And here's why. Because my growth rate for our whole agency, it's a pretty good-sized agency, is whatever it was high. And she said, every piece of business I take is from some agent that has wanted the insured to think they're doing their job, but who hasn't been doing their job."
Boy, that's a great line.
Yeah, and she said simply by going through a coverage checklist, the client understands that their incumbent agent has failed them. I don't have to tell them that they failed them. I just have to go through a coverage checklist, and they get it on their own.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a neat tool, and it works for everybody. It benefits everyone. So my experience, and I tested this. I've got the facts. That agents who do not treat insurance as a commodity, they actually work the accounts all the time, have average commissions per account at minimum of 10 to 30% higher than norms.
Wow.
That's a lot of extra revenue.
Oh, yeah, it gets my attention. Should get theirs.
Yeah. And it's a lot more productive revenue, so that means the profit margin on it is better. We have studies from the PIA, we have the IIA, DA studies to show great opportunities for agents to have strong work ethics. They're true professionals that really will learn the coverages and articulate those coverages in a way people understand. And we have to do that because we're coming back to the complexity of insurance. Why don't insurers truly understand insurance? Because it's complex. An insurance policy is a legal agreement. Legal agreements are wherever you go, they say, hey, you need an attorney to read this legal agreement. But we tell insurers, you have a duty to read your policy, whether you understand law or insurance. And if you don't understand it, it's your problem, not ours. And just that turns people off. That's just bad marketing. George, you're a marketing expert, a guru. I mean, how can that ever help to develop a positive brand?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
You can't. I mean, this is so, you know what you're really talking about is so basic that I'm almost embarrassed to bring it out, but not. Because, you know, those people who succeed, they succeed because they're doing the basics right. People who don't. And I know that. And, you know, all of us are human, and so we do tend to, you know, sometimes skip the basics. But my inclination would be to tell every one of our listeners and every one of the agents to use this, make sure that you use this as your next insurance, use this Monday morning as in your next meeting. Let's discuss it. Are we really doing this? Are we really doing that? If the agent has the cojones to, you know, to do this, the agency manager, principal, or something like that, you admire them, because this is pretty hard for agents to take. You'd be very careful somebody shoots you in the head if you walk down the street here, one of the people. Yeah. I know agents don't want a commodity. I mean, the customer doesn't. But that's the word we got to get across. They do not want a commodity. We got to get away from that, no question. And this is the way to do it. They don't want it.
And I've been yelled at, I've been screamed at, I've been called every name in the book for emphasizing these points. But I'm going to go back to the fact is that my clients that do it right. Their E&O exposure has decreased. Their sales has increased. Customer satisfaction has increased. They're no longer seen as a commodity. I rest my case. I can go the other way, and clearly we've got E&O issues. We've got lower sales issues. It's black and white. And now that we have new players coming in that can automate, I didn't talk about this in the article, but it's a true point. When you can automate, renew as is, the insurance company no longer needs to pay 12% commission.
Amen.
They only need to pay 5%. That's a game changer. You know, it's the agent's business. They do what they want. I'm saying that my clients are not going down the commodity road. They're taking the time, hiring the people that are willing to take the time to do the job right. They're having a lot more success. I'll throw in a plug for myself in this too. One of the problems with coverage checklists, and it is a true problem, is that insurers don't care about coverages. It's boring stuff. I get that. So what I've started doing is I've started providing a coaching program on how to do exposure analysis for insurers rather than coverage checklist analysis.
Mm-hmm. That's
we don't have time today to talk about that, but it's a spin that makes it a lot more positive experience for the insured, and it is tremendously easier for the producer or the CSR to discuss coverages in that vein than it is in the traditional coverage checklist vein.
I agree. We're getting into stewardship there, and that's what agents really have to do in the risk management. That's a whole other story, but it's a good story, and that's what I hear from people like you who understand. A disclaimer, huh?
Yeah, I got to have a disclaimer. I'm not expecting to win the hearts and minds of people turning red at this. That's neither here nor there to me. My goal is to help the best agents and the very best insurance companies realize how great their opportunity is here. And I'll go back to your example, George, where your agent got bought out. There are some agents out there that really learn to take advantage of these buyouts and the fact that coverage oftentimes does decline when a buyout occurs.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
And it's simply that they go to those insureds like you and say, look, you're probably not getting the same service that you had before the buyout. Would you like to do business with me, and I'll get you back to it?
That is exactly what happened. Well, listen, Chris, this is great. How do people get hold of you? They can call you here, or drop you a note.
Yeah.
You offer all these services. We're not listing them all. But I can refer you. I'm happy to refer you, and I have done so for years because I never had a negative comment from anybody to whom I referred you. Thought you'd like to know that. All these years, never once, everybody that said, this guy did this for me and this for me, and it really is important. So I just suggest to everybody that they contact you. Any last words, Chris?
Pardon?
You're okay.
Yeah.
You said it all, right?
Yeah, you contact.
So people, go get him.
You dropped off there for a second. So, contact me. My phone number, 719-485-3868, or I'm on the road an awful lot. Contact me by email, and we'll set something up to have a good conversation.
Well, it'll be worth it. And again, I thank you, Chris, and to the rest of you, I will see you next Monday morning.